Welcome, everybody. I am delighted to host this fireside chat. We have my name is Adam Gross. You might know me from some of the other Heavybit videos I've done on topics around go-to-market for developer-facing companies, and wanted to kind of extend some of those slide format presentations into something hopefully you'll find more engaging, which is an actual discussion and interview with somebody who's doing this for real, as opposed to me just talking about that. And so wanted to offer that today. And we're really grateful to have Abhinav Asthana today here, the CEO and founder of Postman, which I'm sure you've heard about. And Abhinav and I have been able to chat over the past couple of years. He may not know this, but a lot of the ideas that, if you've seen my presentations, have come from the opportunity I've had to chat with him about how he's built his business, and thought it would be a great opportunity to bring the source straight here. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with everybody and chat with me today.
Thanks for having me here, Adam. It's great to talk with you here, and I've enjoyed our conversations over the years.
Um, I'm certainly familiar with Postman. I think maybe most of our listeners are too, just as users of the product. Maybe you could just kind of give us a quick overview and update, about Postman, where you guys are at, and what you guys have been working on.
Sure, yeah. So Postman today is an API platform for building and using APIs. We are now used by more than 18 million users across more than 500,000 organizations around the world. But we kind of started as a side project of mine back in 2012. We incorporated as a company in like late 2014. So that's when we kind of formally started. But really, we kind of started with the pain point of solving developer problems, and that's still kind of like our DNA. We are very developer focused. We want to make them successful, and fast forward to now, we are delivering kind of enterprise class benefits to organizations, who are building APIs, which is a lot of organizations in the world. Uh, we are, from three people who started the company, now we are close to 500
Wow,
across more than 13 countries.
that's amazing. Remarkable progress. Congratulations. And
Thank
one of the
you.
things I love about your story is it's kind of the classic developer first model in the fullest of bloom. Now with 18 million developers, and I assume, and you tell me, a majority of those using the product for free in some capacity. And then I think you guys then have a self-serve product you have on top of that, and now more recently have added enterprise later. And so really kind of that kind of full spectrum of product and go-to-market decisions that I think a lot of the folks in the audience are wrestling with. Maybe to start, you can talk about the commercialization journey. When did you start? I assume you did self-serve first. When did that start, and how did that go? How did you think then about kind of expanding beyond that?
Yeah, so I would, qualify that journey into like I'd say probably three distinct kind of eras for Postman, short eras, not like big ones. But I think the first one was, just trying to survive in the very early days, and we tried a lot of things. I came from a mobile app background, so I tried to kind of use the same ideas. That was the only way I knew how to monetize. So Postman used to have an in-app purchase. We made it free, and when we kind of formally raised funding, then we kind of gave away more of the product for free. And I'll talk about this, like that's been a recurring theme for us. How do we actually give more to developers over time? What we discovered, I think, in the second phase was this notion of collaboration, which combined like developer problems with business problems, which is where businesses were willing to pay for developer productivity, for quality gains, for all these sort of things that businesses valued. And that became our first product. We started with one plan, just $5 or I would say $60 per user per year plan with probably just a couple of features, and we saw huge adoption of that. And then over time, what we saw was people were expanding on that plan pretty rapidly. And as Postman usage on the free tier as well as the paid tier grew across the organization, we soon had like uh, uh, requests for enterprise. So, I mean, even the enterprise journey has been pretty interesting for us. Like there were people who would just come in and say, we want to buy an enterprise tier. Do you have support? Do you have something? And we just started with like, very little feature differentiation, but primarily support. And over time, I think after 2017, we started honing on the self-serve motion and the enterprise motion, kind of every year.
If we kind of break down that story a little bit, one of the things that has always fascinated me about the Postman story is you've got this, developer productivity tool, which is virtually ubiquitous, is really great, and really an essential part of individual developer workflow. But monetizing individual developers on a productivity tool tends not to be a really great economic opportunity. And you then kind of discovered this collaboration benefit that was really kind of team centric and had a lot of higher level business value. I'm just kind of curious, how did that happen? Was like, were you surprised? Did you anticipate it? Was it one day you had this epiphany? It was like, oh my God, this is amazing, or
Yeah.
did it happen a little more slowly?
Yeah, so I think that's a very interesting question. So I would say the first thing that we observed was over time we saw, I think I would actually reference one of your talks. I don't know which one, madam, but you mentioned that as like shifts happening in the industry that one can catch on. And I think what we observed from developers was that they were spending more and more time with APIs, and that was the primary set of problems that they were experiencing. And we saw that the development model is shifting from this code first to this what we call now like this API first model. And we knew that as developers would shift towards this API first model, businesses would also have like certain challenges as they adopted more and more APIs. So that was kind of like the more general observation we had from qualitative data. Uh, the quantitative data was then very useful to validate this hypothesis. So Postman used to have a sharing feature through which you could share a link or you could export a file. And what we saw was that these developers were sharing within the product, and they were forming like these networks within an organization, outside an organization. And we really, but then we kind of used some analysis on the data to see what these networks were looking like. And we saw there was private collaboration, there was public collaboration, there was partner collaboration. And we could, when we visualized that, then it was this product journey to map what what we saw qualitatively, like this shift towards API first, and this notion of collaboration. And over time, what we saw was that with a bottoms up product, like developers were consistently telling us, that like if you had the right ear, you could see that there were business problems in there. Uh, I think the challenge for us was how not to do too much, and then we kind of built a very fast like iterative model of product development where we would try out things, we would bring it in front of developers, and their feedback then would help us hone it in. I think the other thing that we were very particular about was charging and making sure that people know that a certain set of benefits would be priced, and it's not a free for all from the very beginning. So we were able to kind of segment customers into like people who we knew they were not going to pay yet, and then customers who started giving us valuable feedback on the paid tier too.
So now you've kind of got lightning in a bottle. You've got an amazing base of free users that's growing really rapidly. You've got a clear, delineated, collaborative value proposition that you've kind of created commercial intentionality around and said, we're going to charge for this thing. And, we feel confident about the values going there. I'm sure at this point, I'm guessing the cash register starts to ring, customers are coming in. I'm just kind of curious how you then approach that. You're kind of building out your go-to-market function for the first time. I'm sure your people are calling you up and being like, "Hey, go hire some salespeople." Just with even within the product that you were selling then, how did you think about kind of building that from an internal point of view?
Yeah, so I think, we were very deliberate for the first product. We ran a beta program. We said that it's going to be priced, and we actually had about 500 companies kind of in the program. And I think the inflection point was pretty much reached in the first day. We had our first 5 customers on the first day of turning on like the payment page. And we saw that, okay, we've kind of crossed that bit pretty quickly. Um, I think the journey after that was very interesting because uh, this notion of like what is called product-led growth was not there then. I think it was all termed organic, and
What
we
remind me, what era was this? This is like
this is
2017 or
this is 2015, 16,
okay.
in that time frame, right? So 2016 is when we launched our first product. So yeah, I think our inspiration was GitHub and Slack and Atlassian's products, because I think as developers, those were the things that we bought very quickly, right? And we had like this thing that we'd want to get started quickly. Like I don't want to talk to like multiple salespeople to get to use the product, and we had experience with charging for those in-app purchases, so we knew that customers are willing to buy. I think the most interesting insight that we got was that we had a belief that uh, kind of like smaller companies would buy on credit cards, but what we saw was that credit card purchases were kind of prevalent, whether it was a large company or it was a small company. It was the need that drove a decision to buy the product, uh, the higher price product. And over time, we saw that actually it was a much more predictable model, a much more predictable funnel with like users coming in, going into collaboration, and then converting to paid. And then we honed that gate over time. So initially, we used to have a trial. So you could, use the free bid, but the shiny thing, the nice thing was behind a trial. And again, then we gave away more of the product for free. We said that, okay, you can use it for 30 days without charging, and we actually saw more conversions. Then we gave away a tier of up to 25 requests that you could collaborate upon, and we saw more conversions. So as we started hitting those points, it became apparent that we actually knew, what we were doing. And then the question was like, at what point is a salesperson needed? Like, what is the value a sales motion would add? Um, and when we saw like we were growing triple digit year over year, I think people were pretty confident. I wouldn't speak for my investors. I don't know. Maybe they were like uh, thinking about what when it would happen. But from I think from running the company perspective, I think we were very methodical about it. Uh, Eventually, we layered on a customer success team, and that's when we started seeing that, okay, what is the value of a sales process?
I could talk to you for days about even that part of the journey, and maybe we'll have a chance to explore that more. Today, I want to really kind of focus in on the enterprise piece.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this now self-serve business that's really humming. You're optimizing it, and I'm guessing you're getting some pressure from your customers, from the market, from your employees, from your investors. You know, time to go enterprise, time to go big,
Yeah.
sell deals at 50, 100K, hire reps, maybe build an on-prem product. Um, I think that's really the core question that a lot of folks here are struggling with is how do they think about their investment? How do they think about when? How did you approach that? I know you can't offer kind of specific numbers, but in broad
Yeah.
strokes, and kind of what did you learn?
Yeah, I think the guiding philosophy for Postman was, yes, we want to do all those things, but do customers want it or not, right? Just by having a product and layering on enterprise does not mean that customers actually want the enterprise product. So we, you know, really communicated that intent within the company to our investors, to future investors, to people we were hiring, that this is the part of the journey we are in. We see huge potential here because the world is, shifting to API first. But we have to discover, things along the way. And, we really have been guided by what customers want, in their journey for adoption. So,
Do you,
yeah,
do you
go
feel
ahead.
like you were actively saying no to your investors, or at
Yeah.
least so you felt that you were getting pressure
Uh,
from the market, or your different stakeholders, like they're like, come on, get to it, hire a bunch of reps, we give you a bunch of cash, get on
yeah,
it.
yeah. So there were two parts to it. One was, I think, what is this company going to go enterprise or not? And I think the simple answer I would give is we actually just put that enterprise plan out there. Like we were like, okay, we'll see what that plan will eventually have. The interesting thing was that that plan started selling because like there is a class of customers who only want to buy enterprise. Like it's just kind of written down in procurement that do not buy a self-serve product, and we were like, they want more support, they want all these things. So I think the ratio of that over time and the price point of that changed. uh, I think as this notion of sales reps, like we looked at, like at 5 million in ARR, typically there is this recommendation that you should have had your first like head of sales, you should have tried out a few things. And honestly, we did try hiring reps, you know, but the organic motion was faster, right? Like I with generally the organic motion or the product led motion was faster, or our reps were too productive, like they were closing like every deal. So we were like, what exactly are we doing? Are we doing order processing versus actually selling? So we determined that in the initial days we were just doing order processing, and we would ramp that up. And what I insisted on was that we need to get to the right price point before we decide to go enterprise, because you could not get to the right value as a product and really kind of reduce by TAM, by 5x or 10x, like in the opposite direction, if you price very low. So while we could have sold, at 2x the price point to an enterprise, we knew there was a lot more value in the product.
I know the question that a lot of folks are asking themselves is, how do I think about that timing for my business?
Mhm.
And while, not for Postman per se, and I know you can only offer so much detail, how do you think about when, from a kind of metrics driven point of view, from size of business or number of employees, or what guidance would you give just generically? Like, if you're around this number and you aren't thinking about enterprise, you're too late or you're too early. How do you approach that?
So I would say, in my mind, like hitting this 10 million ARR number and the mechanics of that are very critical. I think even at that number, we knew generally which segments that the platform will fall in. Like we have, startups and small customers. We have companies which are growing really fast, and then we have really large customers. So I think around at the 10 million ARR number, you should, I would segment companies into two parts: companies that have a product-led motion and companies that have a purely enterprise motion. If you have a purely enterprise motion, then you would probably be thinking about it pretty much since product launch. But if you have a product led motion and you are building that funnel, then if I think between 1 to 10, the product funnel characteristics do not change. And if you kind of hone that in, then actually it will just continue through the life of the company. And around the 10 million ARR number, I think you can start thinking about, for a product led business, the enterprise value prop. Am I at the right price point? Am I talking to the right buyer inside the company? What are the expansion rates of existing customers?
It's interesting, the world has changed even since you kind of went through that shift. There's a lot more money out there. There are more expectations. My sense is the companies I talk to start to think about it closer these days to 5 or 6, and
Mm-hmm.
I get nervous for them. Should I be? Do you think that that's still the case, or does five or six still feel early? You're a CEO. You're looking at 5 or 6, and you have to do 20 next year. And doing that without the enterprise deal size can be a
Yeah.
little intimidating. I don't know. What guidance would you give to a CEO looking at that business plan?
I think depending on the market you're in, I think if you study like top of the funnel metrics, I think you can build a pretty good projection for your future plans. Like we really looked at like how many users we were signing up. and that number itself was growing like 100%, and that number gave us a lot of confidence.
You're reminding me of one of my favorite Postman demo I've ever gotten. As much as I love your product, which I do deeply, is not of the Postman product, but is basically of your analytics system, and which was kind of a CRM system too that you guys built. That I, at least to me, showed a lot of intentionality and kind of data drivenness and ability to kind of understand what was going on with customers. I'm just curious, any kind of thoughts to share about that? Was that something that came from kind of culturally? Where did you know to like just invest in data from early on, or did you learn that the hard way?
Yeah, so we had an interesting problem that our product had consumer-like characteristics in a B2B business. And we learned that analytic solutions were not really designed for that. Either they were consumer only or they were B2B only. And we were like, we want to connect all the data points that are, across the customer journey in one place. And because of developers being very privacy sensitive, we wanted to make sure that we treat that data appropriately. So we built an analytics stack pretty much from like day one. And we started with just user data. I think, as we have talked about before, like we then layered on this notion of teams, like how these users are collaborating into teams, and then we layered on this idea of organizations. So if we are, let's say, looking at a company like you know I'll not name a company because I don't know which whose approval I have. But if you're looking at a large Fortune 500 company, you have thousands of users in that company. You have a few hundred teams, and there is one organization. And then we made sure that every single system that we buy, whether it is a CRM, whether it is marketing automation, whether it is like every single thing should have an API, and that API should feed data into our data stack. And we just
So
dump that data and
inside of your data warehouse, you have a model, even if the users are arrayed across however many different accounts or instances, that's unified by company name, or kind of the actual organization. You have a full company view that encompasses all the users, all the products they're buying, that even if that's kind of come from a whole bunch of different touch points.
Yep, every single thing.
And how important has that been in being able to having all that data, being able to feed your enterprise business, being able to qualify those accounts? Is it, because I can imagine it's really useful. I can imagine also like, hey, we just put a form up there and people, who are pretty far along raise their hand and that's enough to kind of feed the reps.
So it allows us to be intentional with every aspect of the business, and sometimes even talking to customers, right? So when we go to customers and they are curious about the scale of adoption that Postman has in their accounts, we actually use this data to tell them, and it really helps us. uh, I mean, typically when you're going into enterprise, you have a lot of these unknowns, and we do a very hypothesis based kind of planning exercise. We look at, okay, this is our hypothesis, this is the data supporting it, and what is the data that is not supporting it, and then we are able to just have much more conviction. So it touches every aspect of the business.
Are you using it to like literally create leads to feed reps? Say, here's the list of your accounts based on here's what's happening and the actual kind of product and activity data from the data warehouse.
Yeah, yeah. So our challenge was that there were so many companies. It's like, how do you prioritize? That was the challenge. I think over time, I think we've gotten better at it. But yeah, we know so we, in a way, we are kind of watching customers, and in some cases, customers raise their hand. In some cases, we can go out and tap someone within a large account, knowing that there's a large opportunity there.
Um, so you're in market now with an enterprise product. You are pretty far along comparatively in the journey. You've done this transition now from building a self-serve business, now building an enterprise business. I'm curious, what kind of looking back, lessons learned, what would you double down on, and what would you call maybe a mistake that you'd avoid in the future?
Yeah, that's hard to answer. Like, I mean, I think our number one mistakes were around I think figuring out marketing, and I would say all aspects of marketing, which was very hard to really reason about. We were like, okay, we have this massive growth. There's a huge word of mouth. Where do we put in marketing dollars to work? And we ended up doing uh, too many things. I would have focused very, very specifically on a few things. I think enterprise product marketing, packaging was something that I wish we had, started thinking a little earlier about. It worked out, but yeah, I think that was one thing that I really feel like, I mean, we are still learning, and I think the culture of the company is like, how can we do better than ourselves? So there were no like templates out there, and and even the template that we picked didn't really work well. So that's one thing I wish we had done
It's a
earlier.
pattern I've seen a couple times, or I should say, even reasonably frequently, is when you bring a marketing function into especially developer centric, developer first organization, you just start doing all the marketing. and
Yeah,
and that's and there are a lot of really great leaders who know how to do that, and that's kind of you bring somebody and then you're just engaged in everything from conferences to who knows what, and it's hard to understand. It's one of the reasons why I sometimes advise folks to build marketing functions a little more bottoms up than top down, so you can kind of get some chance to get an opportunity to explore on the maybe things you would double down on if there was like here's a little bit of like secret sauce you think you had in your going enterprise journey. What would that be?
I think I would have been more aggressive in giving away more of the product for free,
You'll give
which is
you're not you're going to make all of the conversations I need to have in the future harder by saying that, but
so I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I think the thing that we discovered, like for our audience, right? Like, and this is our audience, it's like sample size of one, but we learned that to like product engagement is really like the true value that we would create for our customers, right? So if we can say if there is engagement there is value, if there's no engagement there is no point in going value. And what we discovered was if you are very thoughtful about which experiences that you want your end users to have, uh, they actually become better champions. They understand the product much faster. They are really huge proponents of wider scale learning inside an organization. So essentially, any gate that we have put, and you need to be strategic about it. So I'm not saying give away the enterprise product for free, you know, but I think people, if your product, if you really care about end users of your product, then really creating the right experience for them so they can get to 1 unit of value, and maybe then the 100 other units of value is what you charge for.
okay. I hope that comment isn't used against me too many times as I push folks to raise their prices. Kind of last question for you for now. One thing that I have heard a million times in my enterprise journeys as somebody who's worked exclusively in cloud, we'll give you $1 million if you give it to us on prem.
Mhm.
How did you handle that? Did you end up going on prem? What was your kind of approach, and did you get that question?
Yeah, pretty much. I think very very early on, and we still get it. I think Postman right now is all of our tiers are on the cloud. Uh, we are we have components that run on your desktop. It can run on your server, and it but kind of like the quote unquote like control plane or like the main platform is on the cloud. And we got better at the security process, running that playbook. We got compliant with SOC 2 type 2, all those things that we've done over time. But I think what we feel is that it's better for customers when they are on the cloud. They're we are iterating fast with them, and their end users see better benefits. I think I wouldn't predict the future that everything is going to be on the cloud. I think there are some, regulated industries where there are more requirements around compliance that we have to, always think about. But I think from a value proposition perspective, we were able to convince customers that they need to be on the cloud.
I appreciate that, and that only partly contradicts what I said in my presentation. So hopefully that won't be used against me either. Kind of maybe last question to wrap it up for you, even though I said the last one was the last one. I think the typical person watching this presentation is at a developer first startup, probably in the 5-ish million ARR, somewhere in the kind of 0 to 10 range ARR. What you're sitting on the other side, at least, of having built a really successful business. Just what kind of broad feedback and guidance and advice or words of wisdom would you have for folks in those shoes?
I feel like we're still getting started in a lot of ways. There's so many new things to do. But I think if I look back at the journey where I was between 0 to 10, I think as a founder CEO, I really had to build that muscle of hiring like good executive talent. I think that was like the number one thing that I felt I had to, think about. In the early days, people with, pedigree and resumes, look extremely, exciting. And it just feels like if I had this one, person, then they would just change the trajectory of the business. And yes, the right person does change it, but I think you have to build that muscle where people still have to be aligned with the mission and vision of the company. They have to think about customers. And I think I would really have my advice to founders is kind of think about that a lot. Also value, I think, what talent you have inside the company. I think Postman likes to promote people internally a lot, and we have seen that people who have that context inside the company, who are really culturally, in line with the company, I think they become huge assets, down the road. So balancing that, I think, can help really with the trajectory when you are at that 5 million kind of mark.
Great. You've been really generous with your time. I appreciate our chats always. Look forward to continuing them. And congratulations again to you and your team on all the success.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.